what's the thing that's bringing all the kids in?
Cert graduation.
Oh, the surf thing, right.
Oh, here's the thing I don't know how to do. Oh, wait, maybe I figured it out. Is that right? Look at that. Maybe?
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
Not that simple. Yeah. That's to the, oh, okay. Wait, what song is this? Okay, what? Oh, okay. That's it. Oh, okay, well, we'll sing it. I forgot it. I'll improvise. Unfortunately, I'll do them I'll sign them as I give them out. That's what I'm going to do. Go back. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Albany City Council meeting for November 19th, 2018. Please join Councilmember Barnes in the Pledge of Allegiance. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Pilch?
Here.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Here.
Mayor McQuaid?
Here. We have several ceremonial matters this evening. There was a shooting this afternoon in a hospital in Chicago, and I hope what I have to say about the Thousand Oaks shooting is also appropriate for that. Only a few days after the horrific shooting in Pittsburgh, another mass shooting occurred in Thousand Oaks, California. I couldn't write a mayor statement right away as I felt there was nothing left to say. I've written far too many of these in my 2 years as mayor. I heard a news anchor comment, if you weren't actively doing something to prevent this violence, don't say you're sorry. Don't send thoughts. Don't send prayers. You don't really care. And this really resonated with me. But I thought, what can we do? Last Sunday, a week ago Sunday, I attended the kickoff rally for United Against Hate Week. Listening to the speakers, young and not so young, I felt a spark of hope. The students from Berkeley High School sharing information about their Green Dot anti-bullying program. Singh Kalea, a member of the Oak Creek, Wisconsin Sikh temple, whose father was murdered during the 2012 attack, speaking together with Arno Michaelius, a former neo-Nazi, about how together they sent the message that love can overcome hate. The beautiful poetry by Samuel Getachew, Oakland's Junior Poet Laureate, the wisdom of Reverend Buford talking about human rights, all came together with the Bay Area community to remind us that together we can stand up against hate. We must build a culture of peace and understanding, a culture of respect. This comes from our daily interactions with each other, conversations with family, friends, and coworkers. It comes from smiling at or speaking a kind word to a stranger. It comes from civil discourse, an ability to disagree without being disagreeable. It comes from taking care of one another. This must be a lifelong commitment from each one of us to recognize our shared humanity, to reach out and to help those in need, and to stand up to those facing hate. Just as we don't know what tragedies are prevented by strong firearms legislation, we will probably never know if our positive interactions will prevent a tragedy. Who knows if the next shooter, unknown to anyone, will find hope and help among friends or through a stranger's kindness. Who knows if kindness can really overcome alienation, anger, and loneliness? But isn't it worth the effort to find out, to try? Unfortunately, we have another statement. The City of Albany sends our heartfelt condolences to all those who have lost family, friends, homes, or businesses in the ongoing wildland fires ravaging California. This disaster strikes close to home as a member of our fire department lost his home, as did several city recent retirees. A strike team from the Albany Fire Department has joined other brave men and women on the fire lines in Northern California. We send all of them our gratitude for a job well done and wish them a speedy and safe return to Albany and to their homes wherever they may be. And I understand they're back. Is that correct, Chief? Back safely. Good, good. Albany is not immune to the risk of wildland fire or other disasters. The city is committed to both short and long-term disaster preparedness, and we recognize the heightened concern of our residents at this time. We have recently updated our emergency operations plans as well as hazardous mitigation plans to increase our ability to both plan for and respond to emergencies, and we will continue to share information about these plans and their implementation. We are committed to strengthening our ability to respond and increasing our capacity to support our community in the event of any disaster. The fire department website has good information on disaster preparedness. And if you go to the website, it's the fire department page. The next Community Emergency Response Team, CERT, will begin in the spring of 2019. Completion of this class not only helps you prepare your family, it also strengthens our city's ability to become more resilient during and after a disaster. I recently attended the final exam of the current CERT class, which included victims dripping blood and with impaled objects strategically placed. This amazing group of community members will be ready and able to help in the event of a disaster, and I hope more of you decide to take future classes. Thank you all for your commitment to this community. Each of us has a role to play in keeping our city safe and to care for each other before, during, and after a disaster. Let's work together to ensure we have the tools and knowledge necessary for this Herculean task. And apropos to that, we have the CERT graduation this evening. So before you begin, I have a few thoughts I'd like to share. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate in the Albany CERT program. And I want to thank your families also. I know you've gone to these classes every Tuesday night for 8 weeks, so you're not home with your family, and that's a sacrifice on both sides. I also want to thank firefighter Michael Rabb for his expertise and willingness to teach. There are many responsibilities and roles that city government plays in the lives of our residents, but I don't think there's one more important than disaster preparedness. It is a matter of our actual survival, both during an event and immediately after, and also into the future. And I want to thank you all for being part of this team. There are a small number of public safety personnel on duty, especially at night or on the weekends. In the time of disaster, it will be your training and service that will make the difference in how the city comes through the crisis. This class helped you to prepare not only to protect your family, but also the broader circles that you touch. You are the ones who will immediately respond to your families and your neighborhood. You will bring calm to the chaos. Through your training, you are able to provide first aid, fight fires, and rescue people. What an amazing gift you are giving to the rest of us in our community. Thank you for your willingness to step up for the safety and well-being not only of you and your family, but for the entire community. Your leadership is truly appreciated. Thank you all very much.
Great, thanks, Mayor McQuaid. I can't add a whole heck of a lot more to the matter than that. Thank you very much. I'm going to do a quick thing and hand this camera off. Where's Tom? Tom, where are you at, buddy? If you didn't take the picture, it didn't happen. So. Yeah, so just to echo Mayor McQuaid's thoughts on the matter, I really appreciate the fall 2018 CERT class for spending their 3 hours every Tuesday learning about super important skills that are pretty intense subject matter, but hopefully they took away from it not only the ability to help their neighbors and their families and the further constituency of the citizens of Albany, but hopefully they had a little fun doing it. Did you have a little fun? Yeah. All right, good. So, if you don't mind, do we have the certificates?
I have them. I'm signing away here.
Oh.
Sorry, are you ready?
Look away. Fantastic. So how about this? In the meantime, we have Jeremy Allen, who is the wizard behind all of the fantastic audio visuals that happen up here. He's managing back there, and on the very last day of our skills practice, Jeremy went around with a camera and he made a video. He took 1 hour of raw footage and put it into 2.5 minutes of pure heaven for me, at least. It was awesome. So there we go. Anne's got it queued up. We can dim the lights and watch hopefully our next entrant at the City of Albany Movie Festival. Tuesday evening, November 13th, 2023. An 8.2 earthquake rocks the Hayward Fault Line. Widespread power outages are reported with power lines down all over the Albany streets. Your knowledge and skills will be put to the test tonight. You all fight through the gale force winds and heavy rains and meet at the corner of Solano and Evelyn to meet up with your area's incident commander team leader. Structures have fallen throughout the Bay Area and emergency services are responding to critical calls and are unavailable. At the command post, the IC asks your team to enter the gym at Cornell School. She asks that you perform the following activities: search and rescue, triage and treatment, small fire extinguishment, and victim extrication, i.e. cribbing. There are many ways to coordinate your efforts. There's no perfect way, but some ways work better than others. Communication within the team is critical. You're reminded to keep your safety and the team's safety paramount. You have flexibility to get the job done, but work as a team. If there are complications, remember to problem solve and include your operations leader. Try your best to imagine that this is a real event and have fun.
You don't just go, as you said one time, we just don't go running into buildings. You assess and you look and you plan and you move deliberately. That's hard to do when there are a bunch of injured people and fires and stuff.
It was good that everyone was calm, because we cannot be panicked and have them victims and ourselves. So I thought we played very smart.
You guys really cooperated well. You played well together, and that is one of the biggest things. Is not going willy-nilly and off on other people because they're maybe not doing what you want them to do. No, I didn't see one bit of that. That's really crucial. That's really good. Excellent job.
Yeah, great. So thanks, Jeremy. You added a layer of professionalism that did not exist before right now. So thank you, Jeremy. And if I could just present a couple certificates to our 2018 Fall Cert class. And Chief, if you don't mind coming up. Perfect. Very good. Okay, so the first person is Robin. Very good. Next is Seth. Yvonne. Christina. We now have 2 generations of Fru in Albany ready to help out. Lori. Nick. Bo. Stephanie. Bell. Get a pin and a mayor handshake. Sid. And Tom. I didn't forget anyone, right? Okay, good. Okay, if you don't mind, one quick 60-second period to take a quick photo, if you don't mind. Thank you, Council. I appreciate your time. And City Manager Almaguer, I really appreciate your time. Thank you. We'll get a quick picture. Thank you.
Come on up here, we stand up.
Bill, I'm so used to you. Bill from Berkeley CERT also helped out again this year. Thank you, Bill. Quick handshake.
You guys can squeeze together more than that.
You've been much closer. I have to say, this is the first time the entire class has been here for graduation. Okay, that brings us to consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or member of the audience wishes to remove an item from the consent calendar. Any council member wish to pull an item? I'd like to pull 5-5. Anyone else? Any member of the public wish to pull an item? And the only reason I pulled 5-5 was to publicly thank Donald and Lynn Morris for their generous donation to the Albany Police Department. And with that, I'll accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuay?
Yes, and the motion carries. Good of the city. Good of the city is a time for persons desiring to address the City Council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note city policy limits each speaker to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. Do you have any cards?
Brian Beal, Brian Parsley, and Jeremiah.
Hi, I'm Brian Beal. First off, I wanted to talk about the election that happened last week. Some great results. It's hard to talk about what's best, but we got some 37 new representatives in Congress. And here locally, we had a victory in Assembly District 16. So now all the 9, we have 9 good assembly members in the Bay Area. And here locally, we saw, I wanted to congratulate Mayor McQuaid and Vice Mayor Nason on getting reelected to the City Council. I think Preston made a good showing of himself, and I certainly wish him well in the next, should he try again. But also the biggest news is that Tony Thurman was elected to be the superintendent of schools. And I just thought I'd mention that, for hundreds of years, people have been coming to California looking for gold. And to me, I found it here. The real gold in California is the education system and the public education system. So glad to have him. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that, upcoming, you'll be having a reorganization in the council in December, and it'll be time to pick the next mayor. I feel like Peggy has done a great job, but I think there's a lot of thoughts about having rotation in the city council, and that we should get to see different viewpoints up there represent the city. And I think, especially considering that he's only going to be here for 6 years instead of 8, that you might want to consider making Nick Pilch the next mayor of Albany. And I feel like he's really at the center of a lot of what's going on here with the leadership he's given us. So anyway, I'd ask you to consider that in your thoughts over the next couple of weeks. So thank you, and again, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. Kind of piggyback a little bit on what Brian said. I was thinking about after the election and some issues that came up during the election, and one of them being money, how we spend money, and the difficulty in running a campaign, and specifically the finance limits and the difficulty, some would say, with an incumbent having an edge, although clearly that did not play out in the school board. So I'm not quite sure how that works. But along those lines, something I thought about was one of the hurdles that anybody, whether it be an incumbent or somebody running for the first time or any candidate, one of the hurdles is the filing fee that the city has. And I'm not quite sure what it is now. I think it used to be like $9.85, something in that range. And one of the ideas I had thought about was, what if, as a part of accepting the campaign finance limit of $6,000, that the city would pick up that filing fee, and should a candidate want to spend more than $6,000, they're certainly welcome to, but they would have to pay for their own filing fee. And I think now is the time that maybe this discussion should be had, because the 3 council members are coming off of council, and there will be no incumbents in the next election. So the idea would be this would probably be the best time to do that, as to not affect any one council member currently sitting. Just an idea, I've thrown it out there, but if one's going to take the $6,000 pledge to stay under $6,000 for their campaign, there might be a benefit that we look at to assist them in that, and that would go with any candidate, whether it be an incumbent or a newcomer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, City Council. My name is Jeremiah. I just want to first and foremost say thank you for the fire department for sending an engine up to the campfire. And there's a crew up there, so thank you, Albany, for using your resources to help fight these fires. So it's nice to see Albany take action in the moment. It's always something tough to do for people, is taking action in the moment, but I appreciate it. So my thoughts and my prayers are with them up there to bring them back home safe. And I just want to say that a few things that I'm thankful for, since Thanksgiving's coming up in a couple days. I just want to share some things I've been thankful for from the city. One thing is that it's nice to see that if one person wants to come to the city council and have opinions and positive suggestions, it's nice to see them implemented. I just want to say thank you so very much for all those pedestrian signs on San Pablo. The school's started now, and so it's probably helping a lot of students cross San Pablo safely. And there's so many of them, and it's just, I'm so thankful to see that. It's a really nice improvement. I was sitting at the parklet the other day on Solano right there at Cornell, the bus stop thing, and if we're going to build another one, the metal gets really hot. I sat there just like I put my arm on the chair here, literally for half a second, and I think I still have a burn mark. And I'm not going after the city or anything, but I just, you probably didn't know ahead of plans how hot that metal would get. But if you guys want to check it out, that metal gets really hot at the end of the day, and it holds a lot of heat. But it's just a positive suggestion so nobody gets hurt. I'm not griping or anything, but I'm very thankful for everything. I'm thankful to see all these crossing guards. It looks great. I'm just very thankful that we have many crossing guards and the children are getting to school safely to and from. So I'm just so thankful for being able to come here and express my freedom of speech for my 3 minutes. And I really appreciate the city council and everybody not just ignoring me and just taking what I have with some credit behind it. And I just want to be a credible person to where if I say something, you guys actually believe me. So just thank you very much, City Council, Public Works, do a great job, the fire department and the police department. So it's just thanks for everybody, the whole city, and also the citizens. We have some outstanding citizens in this community. Last winter was really rough for me, and I wasn't working. And the only thing that kept me going, that helped me survive, was the community, not even my own family. So when it comes down to it, community is a very important thing. And I had countless people stopping by, giving us gift cards to Sprouts. So thank you for everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Didn't put in one of these earlier.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tom Thomas. I'm president of the board of directors over at Gateview 555 Pierce. And I just wanted to say we're working on improving some of our facilities. We're working on a new emergency plan, working with the fire department on some issues that we've had. And we're also looking into beefing up our internal security in the complex. At the last open meeting on our board, some of our residents expressed that they're scared on Pierce Street. And we've had a lot of car breakdowns. I walk the dog every morning, and there's a lot of broken glass on the sidewalk up and down Pierce. And I know you've improved the police surveillance on that block, but if you can look to maybe improve it a little more, because we've still got a rash of break-ins, and it's in the cars mostly, but some people are afraid to walk down there too. So whatever you can do to help the police patrol that part of the city too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janet Lynn, also from Gateview, 555 Pierce Street. You may be familiar with Saul Strand, who comes here at almost every meeting, and he speaks for Gateview quite a bit. I'd like to push for more services on Pierce Street, particularly police services. It's a short street with a very high density, and I believe we pay at least 10 to 12, if not 12%, of all City of Albany's tax revenues, and we're not getting our share of the services. Some say we're sort of the forgotten residents of Albany, and it's not being, the residents there are not being taken seriously. We have a lot of incidents, as Tom broke it down for you, car break-ins on Pierce Street, or all kinds of, there's also a mugging, it's all kinds of things going on. And we'd like more police patrol on that street. And we'd like to get our share of our tax revenue, 10% at least, if not 12. That's it's there's 3 big units of condominiums over there, and it's average at least 1,500 to 2,000 residents over there, if not more. So I'd like to have the city council's attention, to pay more attention to the residents on Pierce Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deepak, and I'm also a board member at the 555 Pierce Street. I'm going to be talking on the same line as my fellow board members have mentioned. We have been recently experiencing more car breaks on Pierce Street. So our community, which is over 1,500 people, wants to know what the new elected mayor and city council member can do to improve the safety on 555 Pierce Street. And what we also request, like, if you can get more patrollings, especially after the sunset, because it's dark and there's less lighting. And other thing also, the community wants to know, do you have any CCTV cameras on your agenda? Because we cannot have patrolling 24/7. So you need to have some kind of, because anytime you walk through Pierce Street, you always see car break-ins. You always see windows smashed. So I think we need to do something with CCTV cameras. If it's not in your agenda, we need to know as a community of at 555, 535, what we could do so you can have that on your agenda and we can improve the safety on Pierce Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council. Okay, council reports on meetings attended, announcement of future meetings, city manager reports. Council members, what have you been up to the last few weeks? You've got a whole list.
Oh, I have a whole list. On the 8th, I attended the field JPA meeting for the soccer fields at the end of Gilman. There was an update on the proposed clubhouse that they want to build on the fields. This is currently estimated to be at a cost of about $2.4 million for 5 bathrooms and a meeting room. Seemed a little steep to me, but they're just beginning to develop the plans. It will be also dependent on Caltrans bringing a sewer line over when they do the 2 roundabouts on either side of the freeway. So the heads up about that is in part because there's also talk of perhaps needing a new JPA agreement, which may come before us at some point. And part of that new JPA agreement would be raising our current dues from 15 grand a year to 30 grand a year. So it's a heads up. I don't know when this will actually come down exactly, but something to pay attention to. On the 14th, there was a Housing Authority of Alameda County meeting. That was mostly a lot of administrative detail that was discussed. One interesting fact that came out of that is it's generally considered there's now been a 10% drop in rental rates in Alameda County, although I haven't heard that from anybody in Albany, but that's what they're saying on the county level in this last year. On the 14th, there was also a Waste Management Board meeting with priority setting for the next 2 years. The agency would like to kind of look at the things they're doing in terms of climate benefits and shift away from just the question of how much stuff we're putting into the landfill, but how what they're doing is related to climate change. And then today was a Programs and Projects meeting for the County Transportation Commission. And that the main agenda item of interest there was a RFP for the greenway, the bikeway between the Lake Merritt BART station and Fremont that will happen someday. And somewhere in the last couple of weeks, there was a wonderful mayor's meeting that our mayor hosted.
Okay, any others? Rochelle?
Everything I did, you did, so you may take it away.
Okay.
Yeah, just briefly, I did not attend the film this past Friday. I had to miss that, but I did attend the film as part of the Hate Week, or United Against Hate Week, this past Sunday. I can't remember the title, but that was a very moving film. And I had an EBCE meeting on Wednesday the 7th. It was a short meeting, nothing of note there. And I also ate some great food at a mayor's conference.
I attended two events through United Against Hate Week. One, the rally in downtown Berkeley, and the other was the showing we had here of Near Normal Man, which is a very powerful movie. And it was also really nice to have the city, the school district, and the university and the community foundation all partnering together for this event. There was a chamber mixer. I did attend an art opening at Belmont Village, which was really interesting. It was students from UC presenting their artwork and having it on display at Belmont Village. Rochelle and I attended the League of Women Voters panel on housing, and we did do the mayor's conference. Again, we did that at Belmont Village, and I want to thank all of you for being there. It was really nice to have all of you there. City manager's report.
I want to bring your attention back to the screen regarding our disaster preparedness alert program. We touched on this briefly in a training that the council held earlier this evening, but for those of you who have not signed up for AC Alert, please do. Take the time. It takes maybe 2 minutes, and it will give you that notification if and when we have an emergency within our city. It's something that you do need to sign up for so that it can come to your fingertips, meaning your cell phone or your email or so on and so forth, not just your landline. So I would encourage you all to do that. I'm signed up, and I get alerts for Berkeley and other places where I choose to get alerts for, and it's very helpful. So I would encourage you all to do that. It's on our website under disaster preparedness, and we also send it out through our e-notification and e-newsletter. Additionally, switching subjects, if you wander around our parks, once you're able to go outdoors again, we have been installing the water bottle filling stations. We've successfully installed them both at Memorial and Terrace Park. The remaining stations will be installed over the next couple of months. And so we've just had a great CERT graduation here. There will be a community meeting of that group on Tuesday, November 27th at 7 p.m. in the EOC, which is the building in between City Hall and the fire department, with a guest speaker, Deputy Director of the Earthquake Science Center for the U.S. Geological Survey, and an Albany resident, who is Keith Knudsen. So please join us for that educational event. Also, it's going to rain. We're very excited about that. And we do have sandbags available for residents. So they are at Ocean View. You get the bags at the fire department. And if you need help with that, contact our neighborhood services coordinator. We can deliver bags. We can help you fill them, whatever you may need. We'll have some filling days, if you will, for those who need help. One of those is on Saturday, December 1st. And they are at Ocean View Park. The rent review workshops are still ongoing. The next will be held on Tuesday, December 11th at the Senior Center at 7 o'clock. Again, that's information for both tenants and landlords. And I'd like to announce that we have retained a part-time neighborhood services coordinator who will be administering our human services programs, linkages programs to county and other regional services. The individual's name is Anne Marie Heineman, and she will begin on December 4th.
Nicole, when is that, the earthquake presentation again?
Sure, it's on Tuesday, November 27th.
Thank you.
7 o'clock.
Okay, and that will bring us to new business. Item 11.1, encroachment permit for bus stop parklet at 1116 Solano Avenue, Mr. Dewey's Cashew Creamery. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, bear with us as we switch screens. Sorry for the brief delay. Before you tonight is an encroachment permit request for a new bus stop parklet proposed for Lower Solano Avenue at 1116 Solano, which is in front of Mr. Dewey's Cashew Creamery. Just to refresh the council's memory, AC Transit earlier this year applied for an encroachment permit and received approval through the city council for bus stop relocation. And so what this does is relocates the 72 route to the north side of San Pablo and Solano, and then it relocates the 18 bus stop on Lower Solano at Solano and Canes. Those changes were approved in April. Tentatively, those curb assignments are going to occur within early 2019. And this is the proposed bus stop location. There is a loss of 4 on-street parking spaces that was approved with the previous action. So whether or not this parklet encroachment permit application is approved tonight, there is going to be a bus stop at this location. It's just a function of whether it's a red curb or the parklet goes in its place. And this is to give you an idea of the length of the red curb and those 4 street spaces that will be removed. So as part of this request, the applicant is proposing to build another bus stop parklet combination, kind of similar to what's in front of Hal's. So this would be similarly located in the public right-of-way. The owner has been working with a licensed landscape architect who does design build work and has built parklets in other jurisdictions. And again, just regardless of what the outcome is tonight, that parking and that red curb are going to be implemented in early 2019. So this is a rendering of the proposed parklet. So the side that opens up to the street would be the bus stop component with the sail shades. There would be built-in benches and planters.
I'm sorry, Ann. Just to clarify, the bus would pull in at the very bottom of this image. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the bus would pull in on the bottom, and then the cafe seating on the other side would be accessible from the sidewalk and would have a planter buffer from vehicles passing through on the street. These designs are fairly conceptual at this point. This is to give you a general idea. There probably will be some refinements in terms of the finishing materials and dimensions, planting, so on and so forth. But this is the overall proposed footprint, and again, it's a combination of both a bus stop and a parklet. This is a view from the sidewalk looking towards the cafe seating, and again, the bus stop is just to the east of that. You can see it in this rendering, and it shows up a little bit better in the next rendering, but the big belly trash cans that are out there would actually be relocated and kind of tucked behind. And there will also be, this you can see it, some inverted U bicycle racks that will also be installed to increase the potential there for bike parking. Right now, the cafe seating that's out there currently is proposed to remain. I don't believe there's any plans to take it out. Of course, that could be subject to change at any point. As part of this, the project designer, both the business owner and the designer actually have been working with AC Transit on the bus stop parklet design. AC Transit has guidelines for these facilities and a policy that they have. So this project and the design before you utilize these guidelines so that they are consistent with AC Transit standards for bus stops. This project is not a city-sponsored project, and I point that out because you're not being asked to make any financial commitments by the city. This is going to be entirely privately financed, so really the only issue is the approval of the encroachment permit. There's no financial considerations before you as part of this request. In general, the maintenance for this is also going to fall to the applicant, the business owner. They will be responsible for the ongoing and long-term maintenance of the bus stop parklet. Just to give you an idea of the frequency of stops, the 18 stops every 15 minutes for approximately a 15-second duration for a total of 4 stops per hour. This bus stop is going to be an in-lane stop, meaning that the bus will not pull over. That would create an obstruction and prevent traffic from proceeding. By doing the in-lane stop, it's also a faster embark and disembark because it's staying within the lane. The 18 bus is going to make right turns from San Pablo Avenue, likely on a green light. As anyone who's driven through this intersection knows, it's a split phase signal, meaning that the eastbound and westbound directions on Solano don't proceed at the same time. They're split with a left turn arrow. So in terms of buses proceeding in the eastbound direction, it's typically split with the westbound traffic. So it helps to minimize the potential there for backups. And again, the frequency of the stops for 15-second duration 4 times on the hour, I don't think is expected to create any significant impacts in terms of vehicle backup. Encroachment permits are regulated by Section 14.2 of the Albany Municipal Code. Substantive permanent encroachments into the right-of-way are generally brought to the council for consideration before staff would issue any permit to allow this work. This went to the Traffic and Safety Commission on October 25th, and at that time the commission voted 4-0 to forward a recommendation to you to direct staff to issue the encroachment permit. We had conferred with public safety on this. Police in general didn't have too many concerns. Their biggest concern was that the benches have arms to prevent people from laying down for extended periods of time, and that's something that can be incorporated into the design. I reached out to the fire department, and I expect to have further discussions later this week. But right now, we're not expecting significant comments since this doesn't affect the travel flow. They would still have the same access onto Solano. So in terms of next steps, if the council acts this evening to direct staff to issue the encroachment permit, the applicant will still have to formally file for building permit plan check. So these are the more detailed construction drawings where all of the specifications, materials, dimensions, everything are laid out on plans. They are sent to our outside plan checker for review and compliance with the building code and accessibility regulations. Typically, this process takes about 2 to 3 months. So at the time that the building permit is ready to issue, both the encroachment permit and the building permit would be issued concurrently. And just to remind you that even if this encroachment permit does not move forward this evening, the curb will still be scheduled to be painted red in early 2019 for the bus stop relocation. And with that, we've included Resolution 2018-135 with a recommendation to approve, which would allow staff to issue the encroachment permit for the bus stop parklet.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, I have a number of questions. So we have another parklet which is already in place in use, and was the process any different in approving an encroachment permit and all the other things between that parklet and this parklet? I note that one thing you say is it's not city-sponsored, but I believe the city was more of a partner in the other parklet. So can you talk about the differences in the process and in these two parklets?
Absolutely. So for that particular project, there was a financial contribution by both the city and AC Transit. I believe the city contributed $10,000 for the construction of that, and AC Transit contributed about $25,000. Because there were city funds associated with that, it went through an additional level of review with the Parks and Recreation Commission. This being that it's privately financed, we have took it through the Traffic and Safety Commission and now to the council for consideration.
Okay, and so it might be too early to say this. I do note that the resolution specifies that an agreement will be worked out later, a full agreement about the maintenance, et cetera, of the parklet. But I wonder if the sponsor goes away of either parklet, what does the city expect to be the outcome in terms of continued maintenance and ownership of the parklet should the sponsors leave town?
So I think one of two outcomes could occur with that. There's the potential that there could be another project sponsor that wants to come forward and assume the responsibility for the parklet. Alternatively, if it goes away altogether and there is no project sponsor, it would be removed.
Ah, interesting. And you noted that 4 on-street parking spaces will be lost due to the bus stop relocation, but presumably there will be at least 1 or 2 spots, new spots on San Pablo Ave where the previous stop was?
That's correct. There will be 2 on-street parking spaces on the east side of San Pablo, south of the Solano-San Pablo intersection.
Okay, thank you. And finally, it's been brought to my attention that the circulation at the bulb out is potentially problematic, particularly on the Solano side where someone in a wheelchair might have difficulty navigating all the fixtures there. I think the tables are permanently affixed to the bulb out, and anyway, it had been pointed out to me that the design of the circulation there might need some review because it might be a little crowded for people with mobility issues there.
Yeah, we can certainly, should this move forward, we can certainly look at the measurements to make sure that it's compliant with ADA regulations.
Okay, that's all my questions at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, I wondered, is there someplace in the UBC that talks to bulb outs or parklets? I mean, I can see how ADA accessibility would have to be applied to this, but are there standards for how these things lift off the pavement, or?
I don't know that there's any specific standards within the building code. I think kind of as a general practice with this, this has been designed so that turning radiuses can be achieved. So if there is a wheelchair user, they can successfully navigate it. It is, I believe, going to be I think flush with the curb so that there wouldn't be a gap or any sort of hazard that would preclude wheelchair access.
Okay, but in terms of the style of construction, I've paid attention to the one that we put in before and the one that's further up Solano, and they're slightly different, and there's different techniques were used. I wondered, is there something that's coalescing around this is the way you should do a parklet or a?
I don't know that there's really any specific standard since this is a fairly new type of construction. I think they're all built a little bit differently from each other.
Okay.
Michael?
A few quick things. If the permit was not approved and the curb is redlined, or would the bus then pull in, or would the bus still?
The bus would still do an in-lane stop because if they attempted to pull in, I don't believe they have enough room to move in and would have.
Are they going to run articulated buses on that route? Do they know?
I don't believe the 18 has articulated buses.
Okay.
I think it's the.
Just a quick follow-up on. There is currently a bus stop that is going away in front of the Da Nang Vietnamese restaurant, which is on the south and east corner of the intersection of Solano and San Pablo. And we're moving one of the bus stops in front of Mr. Dewey and the other one just up the street. So we're gaining 2 parking spaces in front of Da Nang. We're presumably losing some parking spaces in front of Avalon Glass Works.
That's correct.
So how many are we losing there?
I think Jeff may have to refresh my memory. I want to say it was
probably two or three.
It's basically.
So
the
there's,
curves
and then
out.
we'll lose the ones that are being red curbed up in front of Mr. Dewey's. So it is a net loss of parking. I just wanted to make that clear. The other issue is in designing, we have two parklets now, but they're on the north side of the street, which is quite a bit sunnier than the south side of the street, because at our latitude, in the middle of summer at noon, the sun is 75 degrees high. It's only 15 degrees below the perpendicular, so there's plenty of sun. In the wintertime, the sun is only 30 degrees high at noon, so there'll be quite a bit of shading on the south side. So I just don't want people to be disappointed when they think of our sunny parklets, because in the winter, that parklet will not be as sunny. So we might want to think about where to optimally place tables and whatnot, just to give people their winter sun fix, people like me. All right, and here's the tough one. And I want to preface this by saying I had lots of pet rats as a kid, and I do not have any particular aversion to rats. And I do remember the book Charlotte's Web. Remember, Charlotte is the spider, Wilbur is the pig, and the rat was on the tip of my tongue this morning. And now that I'm over 60, that takes about 2 hours for that memory to pop back in my head. The rat is Templeton. And if I were Templeton, living under one of these parklets, if there was space under there, is where I would want to live. And apparently that's becoming a problem because people drop a lot of food and there's a little gap under there and there's getting to be some problems. So I hear from Solano merchants about vectors. And that's one of those technical words, vectors. And so it would be nice to specify in this design if we can make it sort of rat-proof from the get-go, so that they don't have little crawl spaces where they can just sit under there and open their mouths and have Mr. Dewey's cashew ice cream fall right into their mouths, which would be like rat heaven. And that's it.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Some I'm just kind of curious about. Was there an encroachment permit originally for the tables and the benches that were put in on the bulb out?
I'm not sure if there was.
Okay. After the original bulb out was done, it became apparent we had to put some kind of barrier in the street to keep people from going around the bus. I'm assuming that's what that was. Is that anticipated to happen in this block?
Oh, you mean the bollards that are at Hal's office? They can certainly be installed as part of this.
It seemed like it was important the last time. Maybe we want to start out with those. I don't know. And then I'm kind of curious about the sailcloth covering. When it rains, are they going to fill up with water and at some point dump or break, or?
I don't think that's a permanent.
It's not.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure how that works. They may just come in during the rain, or this could also be modified so that there's more of a semi-permanent shade structure.
And I understand that AC Transit doesn't like bus shelters anymore, which I think is really poor customer service. And I'm more trying to think of how we could encourage them or put leverage on them to put bus shelters in. It seems silly to me to have people sitting in the rain or the extreme heat waiting for buses when there's no shelter. But I'm not sure we can do anything about that, but just.
I think where we do have discretion on this, the sailcloth is by no means permanent in this design. If this is something that you wanted to see change, I'm optimistic that not only could the change be made, but I think we could get something more permanent that would achieve those goals.
I think it would be good if we could do that. And sort of going with what Councilmember Pilch asked about if they sell their business and they move or whatever, who would pay to remove it? I think that needs to be specified in the agreement. And is there any problem if there's a bus stopped in front of the theater and a bus stopped on this side? Does that block the entire street, or how would that work? Or would that ever happen?
In terms of timing, I don't know if that would happen. I mean, I guess it's conceivable that if both buses stopped at the same time, you would have a potential, lock in the flow of traffic. But if, in this case, it's 15 seconds, I'm assuming the north side is 15 seconds. It wouldn't be for, I know that can create some congestion, but
just, I think important to think about if there's a way to have it not happen often. And obviously, it's perhaps going to happen someday, but not all the time. And the other thing, just thinking about the design, we heard about the metal arms or the metal parts being hot. That might be something to look at. And I also remember when the first parklet was put in with the absolute squared off corners that were just like right at eye level for little kids. We might want to think about curving those. I think there was another thing about the benches were flat, so they filled with water, or they were curved, or
Yeah, we're definitely we're keeping away from triangles in this design, and yeah, we don't want to create any hazardous conditions. The designer of this, I believe, has built 6 parklets for the city of Menlo Park, so he's got some experience in terms of materials that are going to be durable and fairly easy to maintain.
Okay. And I think we'll learn from each one that we do, and each one will get better.
Yeah.
Any other council questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. At the little cafe on the plaza at Stanley Hall on UC Berkeley campus, it's just inside the east gate around the fountain. The east gate is the one by the Greek Theater. They have similar kind of curving cloth structures that are outdoors. And, I'm pretty sure they're a heavy fabric. I don't think they're metal. But as long as you're underneath them directly, they keep the rain off pretty well. Doesn't seem to be a lot of spillage to the sides. But someone in all our free time, you can go over there and just look at it and see what you think.
You had another question?
Yeah, so I understand this is just an encroachment permit application, and lots of these details will get ironed out later, although it's good that we make our opinions clear now as well. But one more thing that Councilmember Barnes made me think about was that if for some reason this didn't go forward, would there then be a raised surface in that area for the bus stop, or would it be would the bus stop just be at street level and presumably some paint on the street to designate that?
I think it would probably be at the street level. I don't believe there's any funding or proposed improvements independent of the parklet.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll have some comments after we hear from the public.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding. If we don't do anything, the bus still is in the middle of the traffic lane.
That's right.
And if we put a parklet in, it'll be basically between the bus and the curb. Is that correct?
Yeah, the parklet will be in between where the bus stops and the curb face.
Great, thank you.
Just one question. Are we satisfied we've exhausted all the possibilities for replacing the parking? Because I recall that was a concern for merchants in the neighborhood. Are there any places in that intersection area that we could consider changing configurations?
We could change the green zones to 90-minute, so that would create some longer-term parking. But in terms of actual curb management to create new parking spaces, I think...
Nothing on the west side of Solano, that block. It's kind of an odd block, but I'd hope that whenever we take a look, we look for those possibilities.
Do you have public comment cards? Okay.
Brian Beal, Jeremiah, and Preston Jordan.
So one question for the city planner. Do I understand correctly that this is going to be a public parklet, just like the previous?
Yes, it will be public.
Okay, so there'll be no preferred usage by Mr. Dewey. It's just a public park.
Yeah, you would be able to, have coffee or
Okay.
tacos or, yeah.
Okay, so I'll
anything
proceed on that basis then. So then, yeah, I think this is a great idea. I read the material and heard the comment. I think people's probably greatest concern about this would be the obstruction of the flow of traffic, which sounds like it's going to happen anyway. So I think I would ask you to approve this, and that it's only fair that the one ice cream store in town has a public parklet, so Mr. Dewey's should get one too. And it's a unique thing. Maybe we'll be known for having parklets in Albany. And I think, to my counter to the south side issue, I think it will be good to have alternating parklets on alternating side of the street, not just have them on one side. Because the one on the north side kind of makes me wish that there were another one on the south side. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for taking this up. Speaking for strollers and rollers, and speaking of improving based on the last parklet, the last parklet had the bike parking, or has the bike parking in a similar configuration as proposed for this one. Strollers and rollers' preference was that the parking be closer to the seating. That was not possible to do for various reasons, and you can regularly observe that people pile their bikes up against the trees and the parklet and everything and everywhere, generally not using those racks because people like to have their bikes nearby them. So while it's an idea that doesn't seem to work based on the existing parklet. So if you want to have the bike parking organized, the racks are going to need to be where people, or at least closer to where people want to park them, which is within view of the tables. I would also encourage you to ask that the entry to the bus stop be moved so that the street light is not right in the middle of the entryway. It seems like it could be shifted over to clear that entryway a bit. And otherwise, looking forward to seeing this happen. Thanks. Oh, and Strollers and Rollers is looking forward to contributing to this as it did to the last parklet.
Jeremiah and Brian Parsley.
Hi. I was going to say something about ADA, but it looks good. I'm not sure if you guys are planning on, I think you guys might have mentioned it. I have double yellow poles. It's the things in the middle of the road. I noticed it helped up on Cornell. I was observing some traffic patterns at Cornell right there from the post office, and I noticed those yellow things in the middle of the road on the double yellow really help from cars going around when there's a bus there. It really stops traffic because those cars just come around and then they don't see people crossing the street. I mean, it's a double yellow anyway. You're not supposed to cross it anyway. And then again, yeah, the metal is hot. It looks like it's on the south side of the street, but Mr. Barnes, very knowledgeable about the seasons, and I appreciate that. So, yeah, make note, the metal does get hot. And I'm wondering which way this parklet is graded. Is the water going to flow toward the sidewalk and have more water going on the sidewalk? Or is it graded toward the street to where the water is going to fall into the street? I mean, unless this right here was a drain, or something. And then I also wanted to know are these tables and chairs fixed? Are they permanent, or do they need to be set up in the morning and taken down at the end of the day? And the chairs, I think it's a good idea to have arms on the sides, the police, so that people don't fall over. But, maybe you can bolt them to the ground. I just don't want people to steal the chairs and the table in the middle of the night. So I don't know if they're fixed or someone's responsible for setting up and breaking down. And also, tripping hazard, I noticed there's 2 trees. And a lot of the trees we have in the city, there's a circle, it's a metal grate, and in the circle, but inside the circle, it's either lower, it's never flush. And I've seen people put tan bark in there, but that gets destroyed by dogs. So if somehow around that tree was really safe, that'd be really appreciated. So yeah, it's just no tripping hazards, and yeah, that'd be great. Let's see. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Parsley, Albany resident. First, I would be remiss if I did not say that the Albany Community Foundation did donate $5,000 to the House Parklet. I like the idea that this is solely funded by the applicant. I do share Councilmember Pilch's concern and others. What happens if and when the business goes out of business or moves, what then happens with the parklet? And I think that may be something you need to address in the encroachment permit. I wouldn't put all my money on the AC Transit 15-second rule. Certainly, AC Transit is going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. In experience in working in the University Village, I can tell you that that is not the case. They will park over disabled spots. They will go 6, 7 buses deep when they're only supposed to have 2. So I wouldn't lay all my money that AC Transit is telling you the whole truth and not telling you their best truth. There's only 4 parking spaces between where the bus would park and St. Pablo Avenue. So you are going to have, it looks like either way you're going to have backup. It's going to get worse if it's an articulated bus. Essentially, you're doubling the bus length. And so if the 18 is an articulated bus, it's going to be even longer. It might be wiser to see how the buses move within that new bus zone before you grant this encroachment permit, and see what it looks like. Because once you build this, it's going to be really hard to change it. So you might want to get an idea of how the buses flow with a bus stop there prior to this going in. And I've got 30 seconds. And that's a lot of seating on city property, and this is something that's actually sprung up a lot. And the city, I think, maybe needs to look at not just Mr. Dewey's, but many businesses that have seating on Solano, and if they have encroachment permits, and how that affects the public. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for final comments. Nick, you want to start?
Okay. Actually, I think Mr. Parsley's comments are well taken about the seating. Well, although I'd love to see people out on the sidewalk enjoying the sidewalk and seating, we might want to make sure that we have some controls over that, so that it doesn't proliferate to the extent that it blocks the sidewalk, et cetera. I also would, I think that Mr. Jordan's bike rack comments should be taken into account. And finally, to address the removal, I think that what I would like to see, and again, this is not part of the encroachment permit, but just see what other council members think and maybe give you direction in the future. I'd love to see both the sponsor be responsible for taking away that parklet should they move, but also the city having, if the parklet does prove to be successful and a great public amenity, that the city have the option to retain it and to maintain it themselves. So that would be my preference, and let's see what other council members think.
What does the agreement, we had a whole agreement with the Howells people. How does that address it?
Address the permanency of the installation? Yeah, we would certainly have the policy decision whether or not the city would like to maintain it moving forward if and when the agreed party may change hands. If we don't have a project sponsor, the city could choose to maintain the facility.
Yeah, I agree with what Nick Pilch suggested about that issue, that the city have the option. I wanted to mention that I think that both the Economic Development Strategic Plan and the ongoing work so far on the Solano Complete Streets Plan express concern about cohesiveness of the streetscape, and that I hope that the Dewey's people will be comfortable with the city assuring that we're getting a cohesive look to all these different things that are going in.
Other comments? Michael?
Just a quick clarification. The new location of the bus stop is a done deal, correct? It's not.
That is correct.
It's not contingent on whether or not the parklet goes in or whether red lines get painted or.
That's correct.
All right, so.
I agree pretty much with everything that has been set up here. I think this is a great thing, these parklets, and I personally would love to see more of them. I am one of those people who doesn't worry too much about parking going away on Solano. I think ultimately Solano needs to be more pedestrian and to some degree bike friendly, and cars not really my personal concern, although I know that's a minority view to a large degree in this town. Encroachment permits go with the property, they go with the person that pulls them. Who do they go with?
They don't go with any property. They allow the construction and maintenance, but it's still a city facility, and there's a, both in the municipal code and in any agreements that we have that if there's any sort of a hazard or any damage to the public right-of-way, they can be revoked.
So if this thing is built, it is then the city's. It seems almost...
In a sense, yes.
In essence. So this idea that if Mr. Dewey goes away or the yogurt shop goes away at some point, it then becomes our thing, our parklet. And, I would hope, either in practice or perhaps in the agreement, that we say that we want this built to a standard that we can maintain it just in case the original, the person that wanted to put this out in the first place leaves. Like I say, I think these are great things. And, if we need to move the tables around or the bike parking to work a little more efficiently, that, let's do that. But I think these are the type of things. And to the point about having some standard, the one that's up by the pizza place at the top of Solano and the one by the yogurt place, they're different, and there's different designs. And I think it's okay to have some difference in each one of these parklets. It gives it a little mini localized interest in terms of design. So I wouldn't make that standard. They should all look the same. But that's my comments.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think looking the same but looking different I think similar is good.
Yeah.
As opposed to having one that was totally out of character. But
I think cohesive is the word that was used in the plans.
How wide is the parklet? How many? Looking at these drawings, it looks really wide, but I don't think it is.
I think it's about 8 feet wide.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It just, looking at these drawings, it looks like it's 20 feet wide. Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything to say. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, yeah, just to follow up. So just to, so I understand that the staff is saying the city could, decide to keep it, but just to be very clear about what I'm advocating is that the city have the strongest position. As Jeff said, we have if there's a hazard, we have the ability to remove it, so that's good. But I think we should have the option to prevent its removal. If Mr. Dewey says, no, we don't want it anymore, that we say, oh, wait a minute, we have the option to keep it, we want to own it, and have the option to have it taken away if it is a problem. So I'm advocating for us to have the strongest possible language around our having control over it, even though it's not being built by us. It's in the public right away.
We did have the fixture issue with another structure that shall not be named, so we probably should be careful to figure out whether it's going to belong to the city or it's going to belong to Mr. Dewey's proprietors.
So do you need more direction on that particular piece before we move on tonight? But you could bring us back some language.
Yeah, we can bring back language. I also just wanted to give a little brief summary for the council on other issues that you've identified that we are going to go back to the applicant and ask them to incorporate, and that includes rat proofing, the inclusion of bollards, an alteration so that the cover over the bus stop is semi-permanent to provide some protection from the elements, and then further identifying the responsibility in the event that Mr. Dewey's is no longer the parklet sponsor.
I just want to clarify the process moving forward. If the council were to approve this resolution, you're authorizing staff to administer the process going forward, and that would be coordinated with the city attorney. So it would not return to the council.
That's fine. I guess the last thing I'm not quite sure about is Mr. Jordan mentioned the light fixture. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
So,
President, why don't you come up?
I think you can see it kind of on the south side towards the curve. I believe that's a light standard, kind of in between the two garden boxes, and perhaps Preston can further specify. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So the access to that portion of the bus stop parklet could be modified so that there's not a potential conflict there.
Okay. Is that a light or is that the clock?
I think it's the clock. I'm looking at Google Maps, and it looks like the clock.
That's the clock?
I believe that's the clock.
Okay.
It's around there, yeah. Looks like it.
Well, in either case, if there's big poles, then wheelchairs need to be able to negotiate around the big poles, whether they have clocks or lights on top of them.
Okay. If there's no further discussion from council, I'll accept a motion.
I will move Resolution 2018-135 for the encroachment permit for the parklet at 1116 Solano Avenue.
Happy to second it.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Pilch?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nason?
Yes.
Mayor McQuaid?
Yes, the motion carries. Okay, 11-2, Solano Avenue Complete Streets Planning Project, status update and possible back-in angle parking demonstration. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, before you tonight is an update on where we are with the Solano Avenue Complete Streets Plan, as well as some background information on back-in angle parking. So just to refresh the council's memory, the city received a grant through Caltrans for the preparation of the Complete Streets Plan. We selected a consultant last January and formally commenced our efforts in March. And the study area includes Masonic up to the city limit line. The plan will focus on serving a wide range of users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, persons with disabilities, motorists, commercial vehicles, and public transportation. At a high level, the plan is looking at a complete street, and as part of that, we're looking at refinement and cohesiveness with street lighting, landscaping. As I'm sure everyone is aware, some of those intersections are not properly aligned. The signals that are within the corridor are decades old and could be modernized. Sidewalk improvements are also being looked at, as well as on-street parking management. Bus stops, both in terms of eliminating some bus stops for efficiency and then also creating further opportunities for placemaking and other potential reallocation of the curbs. And then our stormwater system, green infrastructure, Currently, our storm drain system is pretty old, so we would be looking to modernize that and, of course, incorporating public art into the project. Just to give you a background on our process, we've been working with a community advisory group that is comprised of local businesses, City of Berkeley transportation staff, AC Transit staff, representation from Albany Strollers and Rollers, the Solano Avenue Merchant Association, as well as members of the disabled community. Up to this point, we've had 2 meetings to discuss the plan objectives, where those groups have provided us with feedback based on the preliminary details that have been presented to them. As part of that, we also have done a corridor walk to kind of better understand the user needs from each of those perspectives. Most recently, we held a pop-up event on Saturday, September 22nd, and I believe a couple of the council members came out, but just for everyone's benefit, what that consisted of was using straw wattle to narrow the travel lanes, basically creating bulb outs and installing a temporary shorter and higher visibility crosswalk. So what this allowed for, and this was our ultimate goal, was to test both for pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicle access to see how that would work. And there were some definitely some lessons learned from that. Overall, it was a really positive experience. We got a lot of great feedback. And one of the highlights was that we partnered with Flowerland, who was gracious enough to allow us the use of their nursery for the community engagement aspect and displays. And we had quite a bit of foot traffic. It was also quite beneficial to have that event on a Saturday because we got a lot of input not only from Albany residents but from users of the corridor who may not live in the community. And this is just a little snapshot from that Saturday event. So you can see the straw wattle. Flowerland also allowed us to use some of their plants to kind of, lightly simulate the green that could be installed there. And then the crosswalk was shortened and made higher visibility. And I can say that probably within the first 15 minutes of this being in place, cars definitely slowed down. There was an immediate change in the driver behavior. So in terms of next steps, the draft plan is being prepared by the consultant, and I want to emphasize that because you received some correspondence that suggested that the plan has been prepared. It has not. It is in the process. We expect that we will have a draft after the first of the year. As part of that, we intend to have policy language and some renderings to demonstrate back-end angle parking. So that particular component, it has been discussed by our community advisory group. It's come up at both planning and zoning and traffic and safety, and it will be included in the plan once that plan is released. Going forward, we are going to take this back to planning and zoning as well as traffic and safety in January, and we're tentatively scheduling this for council review in February. I want to point out that we have until the end of April through our contracts and through the grant to complete the project and have the plan adopted. So we are on a bit of a timeline here where we are obligated to get this completed within the next 5 months. So with regard to back-end angle parking, this is a policy idea that had come about, as I mentioned, at the commission levels and also within the discussions with the community advisory group. I think there's some learning on this particular policy idea. Our community advisory group was kind of lukewarm overall, but I think in terms of looking at it as a component of the plan, there is no objection to that. Just kind of generally, back-end angle parking, we understand from our consultant, is feasible where front-end angle parking exists. So based on the current configuration of Solano, this could ultimately be included in the future as part of a design and infrastructure upgrades. This is going to sound a bit overly simplistic, but one of our urban design consultants said it's paint on the street. It's not a huge infrastructure investment, and it's something that can be changed. And in regards to what's being proposed in terms of the bulb outs, the angle could be changed to back in at a future point in time. So with what we have, we kind of have a canvas that is somewhat blank, and that it could continue to be front-end angle parking as we have, or it could be changed, but it wouldn't be a dramatic infrastructure change. As I mentioned before, you did receive 2 emails earlier today on this particular topic. And for your discussion this evening, we're just looking for some general direction on back-in angle parking. There had been some suggestions of doing a demonstration specific to this. However, as I mentioned, we are on a tight timeline with getting the plan complete. We are also down to the very last bit of our budget. And it's noted in your staff report that a pop-up demonstration of this sort would cost approximately $14,000. That right now exceeds the budget that we have left to bring this plan to the finish line. So for those reasons, if this was something that the council wanted to authorize, we would recommend that this be pursued under a separate contract independent of our grant agreement with Caltrans, and that it also be separated from the Solano Avenue plan timeline so that we can keep this on track for adoption in February and fulfilling our contractual requirements through April. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll start over here this time, Michael. Sorry. Do you have questions? Okay.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Well, you did answer one. If you're saying it's just paint on the street, so whatever we come up with, bulb outs and stuff, it wouldn't affect whether the parking is going front end or backing into. Is there any net loss in parking, or would you get the same number of?
I believe you would probably get the same number of spaces. You would just be changing the angle. And one thing, just to highlight kind of big picture, is that right now with the plan, we would actually be picking up 9 additional on-street spaces. So we do have some opportunity to increase our parking supply.
Okay. You know, I guess I need my memory refreshed. I remember that at one point when we were talking about the development at UC Village, this was going to be tried on Monroe. And, you know, even though I was on planning and zoning and I worked on all that, I thought we were going to go forward with that, but at some point that fell off of the plan, and that's not what happened. So can you refresh my memory as to why that fell off of the plan?
Yeah, I believe it was actually developer-driven. They were more comfortable, I think, just given their kind of shopping center development in general, that they wanted the typical 90-degree parking, and so that was a site plan change that they initiated.
I think it was to get more spaces in. Because that's what I remember from being on traffic and safety then. You got more with angle parking 90 degrees than
with the back-end angle parking.
Yeah. Angle parking, yeah.
Yeah, it was. You're correct, Mayor. It was to get more spaces, also to allow people to get in and out coming from either direction. And then philosophically, I think this was at that time a little bit of an idea that was maybe a bit too progressive for the particular retail developer we had.
And then the last question for the moment anyway is the expected budget, it would be a cost of $15,000 is what you're predicting that if we were to try this. But I'm not clear as to how long we would have to do this experiment to see how well this would work. So is this a one-day thing like the pop-up?
Right. It would be a one-day event, and that accounts for a variety of cost considerations. So that includes staff time for city staff to be out there. Our public works staff would be on overtime. They assisted us with the delivery of materials and the setup and breakdown. We have 2 consultants, the technical consultants who would be most likely doing some intercept surveys, and then our outreach consultants who actually have physically done the installation within the right-of-way and do the traffic control. And traffic control would also have to be another component of that. We'd have to come up with a plan.
Okay. All right, so that's it for me for questions at the moment.
I have a question, and that involves backstops. We have some backstops on Solano now to protect the bike racks, those colorful bike racks. if we switch to back and angle parking, are we going to install backstops?
I think we would have to install backstops. From what I understand, most vehicles, be it a regular passenger vehicle or a truck, they tend to have the same measurements on the front end. But of course, depending on the vehicle, if you have a truck, you're going to have a much different overhang length than you would, a typical passenger vehicle.
Wow.
And so, in order to kind of prevent conflict with the sidewalk, you would have to have the wheel
like a Mini
stops.
Cooper's wheels are almost, they're way out on the edge of the truck. But a big pickup truck could back in and have the end of the bed being way over the sidewalk.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll continue with this point later.
Rochelle, do you have questions?
Yeah, has the community advisory group identified a particular block for the demonstration, and are the businesses on board with giving it a shot?
The businesses are a bit skeptical of the idea, and when I say that, it's some of the merchants we've heard from. It's also Solano Avenue Association. They have, I think, some general reservations, and some of that is based on what they observe of existing driver behavior. They're I think they observe some concerns with front-end angle parking, so I'm not sure that they're really sold that a back-end angle parking is a solution to that issue.
I'm sorry, another quick question, if I can interrupt quickly. You said the Complete Streets process went from Masonic to the property boundary, you mean to the north, where Nielsen Street is?
It actually goes up to Ventura.
Which is on the property line or the city boundary line on the south side.
It's the city line on the south side, but on the north side, the on-street parking, curbs, sewers, those are all in the city of Albany.
Let's not go there. Okay, but why then not from Masonic to San Pablo on the west side of the street? Complete Streets didn't go all the way down to.
No, I think kind of at a high level, the thinking was that because some of the infrastructure improvements had already occurred on Lower Solano in the late 90s, where there's already some ADA upgrades, wider bulb outs, whereas this area really hasn't had that kind of infrastructure investment. The objective was really to focus on that area.
Two things. One, in terms of paint on the street, being able to change from one way to another. Just so everyone's clear, you can do that if you don't accommodate for the angle of parking. So, for example, if you consider a block of parking as an open box, the cars are going to park in here, and this is the curb, and then you've got the two ends, which are the bulb outs. Either way you go, if you've got angle parking like this, you're going to create an empty triangle of space, either here, or here, or if it's the other way, you create it against this curb or against this the outside of the bulb out. So if you keep your blocks as a complete box, then yes, it's possible to change from either one way to the other. Doing the YMCA here.
I told you you were good at that.
But so I would be in favor of that, to allow us to change our minds later on, but also it's nice to be able to fill in those triangles to create more pedestrian space to either extend the bulb out or extend the curb out that way. So I just want to make that clear to everyone, and I'm not sure that all of the blocks on Solano are a box, if some of them haven't already been, if the bulb out hasn't already come out to accommodate the angled parking. So that would be something to look at, because if it has, then that's going to be a problem for reversing the angle. Second question is the $14,000 for implementing the demonstration. Seems like a bit high. You mentioned some of the things that we would get for that. We would get that includes city staff time, consultant time, and then I assume that Public Works needs to actually do the striping and perhaps signage.
We would actually work with our outreach consultant. They did that on our pop-up event in September, and they have a lot of experience doing these types of events throughout California.
I see.
So
So you'd have them actually implement the infrastructure as well, or the hardscape, the softscape.
yeah, they were the ones out there who unrolled the straw wattle and then put the new temporary crosswalk in place.
Okay. I have comments about that, but I guess I will, I'll take that after public comment.
Okay, I have several questions. So are our parking spaces the same width as other cities, basically? I looked at the photos we received today from San Francisco, and they seem to be wider. And I was just wondering if parking spaces are standard or how that works.
I think. Sorry if I might clarify, because I saw those pictures too. It's easier for people to park moving in, but the ones in San Francisco, they're backing in, they seem to widen the parking spaces to people moving, which might mean if we were going to do the same plan on Solano, we'd have less parking.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what dimension San Francisco uses as compared to what we use. I mean, I think what we use is a fairly standard, 8.5 feet in width, 18 feet in length dimension.
Okay. What happens to these places where there's outdoor eating and then there's an exhaust right there? Does that prove to be a problem?
Potentially, yes. Yeah.
And I guess another question I have is, how does pursuing this impact other projects? Like, we're still working on Buchanan, San Pablo complete streets. We're trying to get through this other project. We're trying to do sidewalks, sewer, streets, everything. I'd like to see us end up at the end of the project. If we're going to do this, to have it ready at the end of the project. I'm just not sure that we need to do it right now. Can you clarify why we need to do it right this minute?
So I don't believe that we do need to do it right now, but because there was a lot of discussion at Traffic and Safety, the thought was to bring it to the council just for kind of a general direction in terms of how to proceed. As I said, when we engaged in our pop-up event, the goal was to make that multimodal, so that it focused on different ways of accessing the corridor. This obviously is focused on one aspect, which is vehicle access to the corridor. It doesn't really get at pedestrian issues, cyclist issues. It's about physically maneuvering a car. So it's kind of one component of the overall plan. I think the plan can proceed without a pop-up demonstration. And then as we get further along in a design process and we have funding that becomes available, this is something that we could do in the future. But we wanted to just raise this for the full council to get some guidance before proceeding.
Has the police department weighed in on this? I know they're all really good at it, but their lights and flashing.
So I'm smiling because very informally we did mention this idea to John Geisberger, and as the council knows, that the only back-end angle parking that exists in the city is in fact for the police department vehicles over on Buchanan. He had an interesting reaction. He said, well, it's easy for us to do this because we have sirens, and so people are naturally going to yield if they see a siren. If it's a passenger vehicle, it might be a bit of a different story. So, I think that is also something, since they are responsible for traffic enforcement and accident reports, that's something they would probably want to look at as well before this would potentially proceed.
Do we have any data on how many accidents there have been on Solano with people backing out?
I don't know that we do. It's certainly something I could inquire about.
And what about other cities, people backing in? If people bump their car, if they scrape it? Because I know it could happen going forward, but it's more likely to happen going backward. Is there any data on that?
I don't have any data necessarily, but Fareed Javandal, who is on our Traffic and Safety Commission and also has the Transportation Division for the City of Berkeley, had an interesting comment, and that is that he said, when you have this, you need to think about your infrastructure on the sidewalk, so street trees, parking meters, parking signage. I guess they had done a pilot program, and they sustained damage in some of those arenas that required repairs.
Okay. I think that's all my questions at this point. Are we ready to open up to the public? Okay. Do you have comment cards?
Yes. Harry Chomsky and Preston Jordan.
Good evening, Council. I'm Harry Chomsky, a Traffic and Safety Commission member. I'm just going to be giving you my own impressions tonight. This is a safety project. This is not about trying to make parking easier or harder or anything like that. This is about trying to improve safety. And it's very much a bicycle access project, because if you have experience driving a car on Solano Ave, certainly from my experience using the front-end angled parking, it's extremely scary backing out of the parking spaces that we have now. I would really be curious to hear about collision data from our existing configuration and the alternate back-end configuration. But one thing to keep in mind is it's a very different kind of collision. If you are backing out of a parking space, you really can't see what you're backing toward. And whatever you're backing toward that you can't see is moving traffic. And if there's a collision, it's likely to be a much more severe one, with especially if you're on the downhill side and there's a downhill bicyclist that you couldn't see, or even a car that you couldn't see. Maybe the car will swerve out to avoid you. And those are the kinds of collisions that can cause serious damage and injury. Whereas if there's a collision caused by somebody backing in incorrectly, it's a slow-moving car colliding with a stationary object. It would almost certainly not be a pedestrian or a bicycle at that point. It might be another car or a piece of street furniture, but it would be a 2 or 3 mile an hour collision factor, as opposed to maybe 20 mile an hour or 25 if you back into some other moving object. So I would really encourage you to think of this as a safety improvement. If there is going to be a pop-up demonstration, when I looked at the breakdown of costs, it seemed that the majority of the costs were related to the setup and planning of the event rather than the execution day. So I would encourage you to make the demonstration as long as possible. It seems like it wouldn't add very much more to the cost to have a longer demonstration, since most of the costs are fixed regardless of how long it is. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello again, speaking for strollers and rollers. It is kind of stunning to hear that this concept has nothing to do with cycling. This is all about cycling safety, obviously safety for motorists on Solano as well. That's what the research shows. If you don't go with this, then you're sort of going against the research. Some of that research has been conveyed to you by a professional transportation engineer who designs projects in San Francisco. And she's currently one of the design engineers for rebuild of Market Street. So, so please don't listen to the anti-backers who aren't familiar with the research, aren't familiar with the safety benefits of this. And I think that making the decision up front to do this or not do this will change the design. So we've heard that back-end angle parking has a bigger overhang on the sidewalk. Well, that could be solved by making the sidewalk wider so that the curb is farther towards the center line. Then you don't need wheel blocks. So there are really substantial differences in design that could occur based on making this decision one way or another. Another design element that Strollers and Rollers is pushing for is to move the trees onto triangular tree bulbs. So you see that on the north side of Fairmount along the BART parking lot. So the tree wells are sort of half on the sidewalk and half in the parking, because angled parking wastes a lot of space. Every single parking space has a triangle of space in front of it that's not utilized. And so by moving the trees essentially onto the existing curb line and utilizing that space, you make a wider sidewalk. So there are, and the configuration of those, where those go, could be impacted by this decision whether to do back-end angle parking or front-end parking. Again, the research is clear that back-end is safer. We have back-end parking on San Pablo. Nobody freaks out. It's called parallel parking. I think people can handle it. I don't really know why we would need to spend the money on a demonstration. People do back-in parking everywhere all the time on almost every street. So please consider this decision seriously because it will impact the design. It does impact the safety of people on Solano. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, yes, I've spent a lot of time watching people park in the city, and people are challenged with parking. And in all due respect, the fact that we don't have this anywhere else in town is going to cost $14,000, I think I heard, for the demo. I think I'm concerned about it because, and I remember there were a lot of cases on San Pablo Avenue where people have crashed into storefronts. And just the fact that this is not something people are used to, I think I would be very uncomfortable doing this, backing in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Peter Campbell, Albany resident. I wasn't planning on being here this evening, but when I saw this on the agenda, I decided I had to come here and say something. I can't imagine expecting people to learn how to back into a parking space, an angled back-in parking space anywhere. First of all, like they do with parallel parking, people will come up behind you and you'll have 2 or 3 cars behind you and never be able to get into the parking spot. The next hurdle is the people backing into the space next to my car. And how often are they going to hit my car? I mean, it's bad enough you get dinged by people's doors when they get in and out of their car. But I think we're going to have a rash of people actually committing serious damage to cars. Think about it. Would you want people backing in, parking next to your car when you're parked on Solano? I think it's a strange concept, and I think it's one that's going to cause a lot of other problems, both traffic-wise and damage-wise. I don't know if it's going to be safer or not, that I can't comment on, but I'm concerned about the logistics of people getting into those spots and the damage to adjacent vehicles. I envision somebody getting into one of these spots, they're going to come up along Solano like they do for parallel parking, nose way out, potentially crossing the line to oncoming traffic, and then trying to negotiate their way into a back-in parking spot. People don't know how to drive well enough to be able to do that. So I'm really concerned that this would cause tremendous problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Presley, Albany resident. Do not spend any money from this council, $14,000 for this project. If it wants to come out of the grant money, that's fine. Please do not spend $14,000, the city's money, on a pop-up project for this. Listen, we have to get real. It may be the most safest way to do parking in the world. But the fact is that it's not taught, that when you go to take a driver's test, you don't do it. Drivers aren't used to it. You're going to have to completely reconfigure sidewalks with regards to disabled spot, unless we just get rid of those disabled spots, those pesky disabled spots, and then everything's going to, it's not just paint. It's easy to say it's just paint, but you're going to have to reconfigure the disabled spots. I get that this is a strollers and rollers pushed project. I mean, I understand that. I mean, from their own standpoint. But there's more than just bicyclists. There's vehicles. If we want to take a look at how many bicycles per versus vehicles use Solano, that's fine. I would rather have more public comment before we make more public meetings before we just go ahead and say back end angle parking. We can't even get people not to cross the double yellow line to park in a parking cross. Can you imagine cars going northbound seeing that sweet angled parking spot across the street and then whipping around to get into that angled parking spot. I mean, the nightmare of this, not let alone, now you maybe have somebody that's has a disability, somebody that might be an older resident who's spent 50, 60 years driving, and now you're telling them you have to back in angle parking. This is just a recipe for disaster. And not only that, when I back out of an angle parking space, I back out slow. Maybe I'm kind of crazy. I like to see if there's a bicycle or a car coming. So I don't think, you know, a car backing into the sidewalk and potentially a person in that sidewalk, whether it be 2 or 3 or 4 miles an hour. If you've ever been hit by a car at 2 or 3 or 4 miles an hour, it hurts, whether it's 2 or 3 or 20 miles an hour. So the idea is finish the project. Let's do experimentation later. Let's just get the project done in the time frame that it has to be done. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for comment. Who wants to start? You want to start, Nick? Oh. Or on the end?
One question I have, and I don't know if the staff has the answer to this, does this potentially improve the situation? Maybe our mayor would have some input into this. Does this potentially improve the situation for a disabled person having to be loaded and unloaded from a vehicle? Is it easier with the back end towards the curb or the other way around?
So that's an interesting question. One of the members of our community advisory group is a wheelchair user and has a van that has a rear lift. And she said that with a back end angle, she doesn't want to obstruct the sidewalk with the lift. And she said she would feel safer, in fact, disembarking in the street.
Okay.
You know, that's one user experience.
One data point. Okay.
Mayor McQuaid may have a...
Well, just tangentially, when I was buying a new car with a lift, I didn't buy the back lift because I did not want to unload my daughter into any street, let alone Solano. Just, you know, same thing, different opinions. And
Yeah,
I see
another
Mr.
data
Jordan
point.
flinching over there too. So,
Okay, well, so we don't really have enough data on that one, but that's something that's another advantage to that can be the unloading of people, but especially goods can be much safer because you're opening up the back and the doors towards the sidewalk rather than towards the street. But in any case, to continue on, backstops I think is a very good, I think whether we do front in or back in, I think we ought to have the backstops because even with the front in, I see the front ends of cars protruding onto the sidewalks all the time and reducing the usable part of the sidewalk that way. So I think the backstops would be really welcome in either case. The back and angle parking is not a brand new thing. It has come up in many different projects that I've seen come by me in the 15 years I've been heavily involved in city politics, and yet it is pretty new. It's different. You know, it is more challenging. It is a little more challenging, I would say, than other parking maneuvers, but as was pointed out, parallel parking does require some skills as well, and I'm not sure we should count on our plan to the lowest common denominator, so that people can't park, people can't drive. Therefore, let's not do something that improves safety because people can't park. That argument doesn't hold a lot of weight for me. Well, so you're talking about cars and where people park their cars, so of course there's going to be a lot of pushback. That's inevitable. So what's being considered here is a trial. A lot of people, including people who with professional credentials, are in favor of this, because I think, as the speaker said, as Mr. Chomsky said, this is a safety project. And I think it's a safety project for both bicycles and vehicles. Every time that I back out of a space on Solano, I do it very, very slowly as well, and usually with zero visibility, and just praying that someone's going to actually stop up the street because they see me inching out. Half of the time I actually can't see. What a difference between that and actually having the front of the car right at the street, where you can actually see what's going on as you pull out of the space. This is absolutely a safety project. I get it that it's a big change, and a lot of people don't want it. I think we should spend the money for a demonstration. And I think if we do a demonstration, we should not do a pop-up. We can have a pop-up for a day with the consultants there taking input, and that would be good. But I think we should continue it for weeks so that people actually have a chance to use it. I don't think a one-day demonstration is going to tell us anything. We need to have people's feedback after they get to use it a number of times. 14,000 seems like a lot for this. I'm very surprised at the number, but I think it's worth it, and I think it will actually give us the data, or give us much more data that we will have to be able to decide whether or not we want this. And whether or not we do this, I do think if we are serious about being able to do it later, if it's just painting the street, we need to look at the configurations of the current bulb outs and see whether they are already accommodating the angles or not, because that will tell us whether or not it's really true that we could reverse it at some point, or do the project reversed. I think that's all I have at this point.
Rochelle?
Well, I was thinking that one of the advantages of this is that people would stop crossing the double yellow line. However, if Peter and Brian Parsley are correct that people would actually continue to cross the double yellow line, but they do it backwards, that is kind of a chilling prospect. My sense of this is it's really kind of too late in this process to try to incorporate this. We did the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Parking for Solano Avenue was a big part of the discussion. It's on, pretty nearly every page, the on-street and off-street configurations desired by the merchant community and the plan for economic development. And that was finished up over a year ago, and now we're a couple of months out from when we're supposed to get this plan completed. So trying to build it into the Complete Streets plan, it just feels too late to really consider it seriously. I would suggest that the idea be incorporated into the strategic planning process. During that process, this could be weighed whether the $15,000, the prioritization of staff, time, all of the things that, all of the investments that would be required could be taken up in the context of competing priorities. And between now and then, the community could be better informed and we could do more research. There are things that I tried to find online. Apparently there was a pilot project in Fremont, and there was a pretty negative, there have been several places where it's been tried, and the response has been pretty negative. And I understand, traffic safety engineers will say one thing, and people who are actual users of a facility might say something different. I do recognize the benefits to the bicycling community, the safety benefit there. Honestly, I see bikers flying down Solano, and it scares me as much as people backing over the double yellow line. I mean, it really just seems unreasonably hazardous, the way that bicyclists use Solano. And I think it might make more sense to look for ways to discourage that than to try to change the parking to make it safer for people to do something that is inherently extremely unsafe. And unsafe for pedestrians, too. It's really scary for pedestrians when, bikes come flying in and they're trying to avoid being hit by a car. So my inclination is to say no.
Okay, a few thoughts. If there was the time machine, we could go back. I wish we had done this on Monroe, because I think that would have been the best place to try this initially, because it's not quite as busy a street. Well, it's definitely not as busy a street as Solano Avenue, and I think it would have told us a lot about how quickly a different kind of parking strategy could be learned by people in a somewhat safer environment. I agree with Nick on this idea that a one-day pop-up, I don't know that it would tell us much. I don't think we would get enough information to really get a idea of how adoptable people that park on Solano Avenue are. If this was going to be done, I think it would have to be done for a longer time. As I said in the previous agenda item, I'm in a minority field of my own. I wish we weren't doing any kind of, it's much more minimal parking on Solano Avenue. I would be perfectly happy with parallel parking. If you did parallel parking, you could actually widen the sidewalks even more. You conceivably could have room for bike lanes between the parallel parking and the sidewalk, which would be the safest situation of all. And it would slow down traffic considerably on Solano Avenue. I think that everyone's so enamored that we have to have lots and lots of parking, I think is crazy. But that said, that ship has already left, so we're not going there. A final thought that I had, I was up in Seattle about 6 months ago, and there was a place where back-in parking had been put out on the streets. And what I noticed when I pulled in there, people actually who were going one way up the street, it just wasn't obvious to them what to do, so they would actually cross traffic and park in front first into the other side of the street. And some people got it. Some people were back in, but in some locations, people were crossing the road and going in head first on the other side.
And they give them tickets in Seattle for doing that.
And they may get tickets, I don't know, but this was a kind of a touristy area near Pike's Market, where I'm sure there's lots of people from out of town that never seen that before, so don't know how to react.
That's why they give them tickets.
Yeah, well, it's a quick learning environment. So in any case, I think I agree with some of these other comments that have been made. I think at this point, this probably isn't something we should be doing with the money that's left for this study. I would be happy to see it tried somewhere else in Albany, maybe the other side of San Pablo, or if we have to have this kind of this kind of parking, either going front in or backing in. If we're going to do it, we need to do it for a longer period of time to get any real information. But at this point, I'm going to vote against it.
Well, I'll make some brief comments about this conversation, but I want to start with pointing out something that's really obvious that we're neglecting, is that when people have the freedom to choose which way to park their cars in their driveways, in many parking lots where there's just straight parking, Costco, El Cerrito Plaza, and then Kaiser parking lots where there's some staff people who park there all day and some people who come in and out. People vote on this issue, and you just have to drive around and see how they vote. The vast majority of people, when they are free to either back in or not back in, choose to drive in the conventional way. And that's probably how many? Maybe not to go, now, the rich doctors in Porsches at Kaiser, they tend to back in. I think they're good drivers. But the vast majority of people, 90%, I guess, 80%, choose to park the conventional way. So that gives you an idea of how popular this idea might be, because most people prefer to drive in. Okay, another point, this comes from doing Blue Glove Crew, these backstops. I hate those backstops because they leaves and crap and garbage and everything piles up behind them, and street sweepers can't sweep the streets if you have those backstops there. And it makes Solano Avenue look really unkempt and ugly. And you know that this may also be an issue with the bulb outs, but I can tell on my street, you know, if somebody parks there on street sweeping day, those street sweepers just go like that, right around that car. And I think street sweepers could still get in there. I would love to get rid of all those backstops on Solano so we could sweep in there, because the leaves and junk and dead Templetons are just all piling up in there. And this would, if you had this back-end parking and you had a backstop in that would eliminate the ability to do any street sweeping. That's just a pet peeve of mine. Yeah, but more generally, I don't think we have the money to do this. I think if you could pick a street in Berkeley, that would be a bad place to do this kind of experiment because of how busy it is and how narrow it is and how wide the parking spots are. Solano would be the place where you don't want to do this kind of experimentation. I would suggest, you know, following what Pete said, I think you might consider alternative spots. The one I have thought about and discussed with the mayor casually is in front of the pool and the tennis courts on Portland, but further up, because there you have straight-in parking now, but and I'm stealing this idea from the mayor, I apologize, but not right in front of the pool. Peggy knows about parking in front of the pool. But further up towards where the dog park is, you could have some spaces in there and you could play with it, and there's a lot more room. But I will not steal any more of the mayor's thunder. She can explain her objections to this plan. But I agree, doing this for one day shows nothing. We don't have the money to do it anyway, so this is, to me, is just a non-starter. What are we even talking about this? We have to listen to everyone, not just traffic safety engineers. I just would like to point out, for example, that there is a certain traffic safety engineer who really was gung-ho on putting these chicanes on Santa Fe Avenue. And I thought those were a total disaster. One of the first things I did when I was on council, I worked for months to get those taken out. So I don't necessarily think that traffic safety people or traffic safety engineers have, you know, received God's wisdom on the best way to park or do anything. I think we need to listen to everyone in town. Here's a thought about the analogy to parallel parking. We have cars that over the decades have been designed to be bumped in their front and back, and we now have flexible plastic bumpers on these cars. So if you parallel park and you bang into people's bumpers, it's okay. It scratches things up the paint, especially if you have a 25-year-old car like me. However, if people are doing back and angle parking and they start instead hitting the sides of cars are much more vulnerable. They've never been designed historically for these kind of routine impacts. And getting your door repaired, do you know how much that costs? And getting it repainted, that's about $1,000. You know, that's just not a little nick in your bumper. So, and I know people will not get the angle right. You know, people have a hard time judging angles if they're not perpendicular. They're going to back in at an angle and they're going to whack the car beside them. And it's going to cost them $1,000 to get it repaired. You know, their insurance will cover it, maybe. So I think that would be a real issue. The idea about this being safer, I don't know. If I slowly back out of a parking spot, if someone hits me, they hit the rear end of my car, which is not where I am, there's not a body there. If I pull out forwards and somebody doesn't see me pulling out, they hit my door right there on the driver's side. They hit me. So I'm not persuaded that there aren't some other possible safety issues. I think that's it. Bicycle safety. You know, when my son was young, I had both, like, first he had one of those bike trailer things for him, and then I had a ride-behind bike. I took that kid everywhere. I took him up to the Marin Headlands, down that really steep road, down to the lighthouse, all over the wine country, Grizzly Peak, Inspiration Point. So I wasn't exactly, you know, a hyper-cautious parent. It never occurred to me that I would take him down San Solano Avenue on his bike trailer, because that just strikes me, even today, as being completely irresponsible. You know, and yet we had a traffic engineer sending us emails about, oh, I don't feel safe taking my 2 kids down Solano Avenue on my cargo bike. And I'm like, there's a really good solution to that problem. Don't ride your bike on Solano. We have built lots of alternative, quiet, safe bike trails and paths on quiet streets in this town. You know, I rode my commute bike down Solano Avenue this morning. I do it. I don't like it. I do it occasionally, very rarely. But the real simple solution to bike safety on Solano, I don't think is going to come from tinkering with how we park. It's getting bicyclists on safer, quieter streets and getting them off Solano altogether. And that's it. That's all I had to say.
Okay, well, I have a few final thoughts, I guess. It does seem that we're all in agreement that a one-day demonstration isn't going to give us what we need. And if we're going to do a demonstration, we need to do much, much longer. I did look at a lot of different cities today that have done this, and it seemed as though most of them liked it after a learning curve. So there needs to be some actual education to this as to how it works, how you do it, all that. But the one thing that does concern me is one thing I read repeatedly. There seems to be an increase in available parking in a neighborhood that has this because people don't want to park there. And I don't want to do that to our business community. So I think what we need to do is educate people on how to do it before we try to implement it on Solano. So as Michael said, we did talk a little bit today, and I would like to have us think about doing a long-term pilot project. And I was thinking Portland, it's a wide street, it has the angle parking between Ramona, which is at the crosswalk, where the Veterans Building walkway is, to Carmel. So it's not right at the pool, it's not right at the tennis courts, it's a little bit further up. And to do it for, you know, like I said, 6 months to a year, and get some real data, get people used to it, then it's not so scary when it comes to Solano. Have time to talk to the business community, try to understand their thoughts, try to kind of reassure people that this is a common thing. People are doing this. We're not just making this up. I'm not quite sure how to then weave it into the Complete Streets project, because obviously we don't want to finish the project and then go, well, we got this little trailer thing to add on. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but I'm sure staff's smart enough to figure that out.
Well, we're including renderings and policy language in there, but I mean, I think a pilot program, particularly if it's at this location, that could proceed at a future point in time, particularly when we're in a design phase for Solano. Right now, this is an unfunded plan, so it will be several years before we're
so that would
in a
give
real
us
position
hopefully some real data to look at it and say, yeah, we do want to do this, or gee, we didn't realize that this was going to be the consequence. So that would be my recommendation, that we keep moving it forward, but we do a pilot program for longer period, not on Solano.
Mayor, could I respond to a few things? First of all, I think that's a great idea. I think, and I agree with your points about giving people lots of time to try it and lots of opportunity to dialogue. I think that's excellent. The only thing I would change is if you move it a block west I wouldn't have to recuse myself from the project. So that would be my preference.
You could move, no.
Oh, yes, okay.
I didn't think of that. That wasn't my intent.
Oh, okay, okay. I just heard a few things that I can't help but to remark on. When Councilmember Barnes says when people have the choice, the majority of people pull in front ways, and I agree with that. But we're not here to implement what everyone wants. We're not here to be the council that is running a popularity contest. We're here to do the right thing. We're here to listen to everyone, but also listen to the informed, listen to the data, and do the right thing for the city. Where I've seen unusual parking, I have seen like back-in parking. I have seen big signs that say back in, which I assume is something we'd have to do if we did one of these projects wherever, is that you'd have to give informational signs to tell people to back in. So that, I think, would mitigate some of the potential confusion around this. I applaud Councilmember Moss's forward-looking thinking about the parallel parking and the wide sidewalks. I agree with him that that's likely politically a no-go, but I like his thinking there. Too bad he's not in favor of this. I did hear that the pilot was 14,000. Okay, I keep hearing 15,000, but you said 14. Okay, just to clarify that. I think, as the Mayor said, definitely more research. Let's give it time. But let's move it forward. I agree that I neglected to say the first time I did not want this to be part of the current project. I agree with that. So I think we're all in agreement about that. And please, let's not talk about what might happen. We don't know. There's some guesses about what might happen and some anecdotes about problems elsewhere. And I don't think this is about bicyclists flying down Solano and hitting pedestrians. I don't see that in the scope of this at all. It's a little scary also for me to hear another council member poo-poo trained professionals and wonder whether research is really right, and says that bicycles should be off of Solano. Well, I think the California Vehicle Code would have something to say about that. The research shows it's safer. Let's get the data and proceed with data. Thank you.
Any other comments? What's the next step? Do you need a motion, or do you have enough sense of the council for this to move forward?
A few different concepts were put out in terms of how and when we would get any clearer direction in terms of next steps. As you can see, there's ambiguity on location and timeline and so on and so forth. So I think for now, staff can take everything back. We'll take the direction on the complete streets and move that forward. And perhaps we'll fold this into the City Council strategic plan discussion.
We're not that far from the strategic plan discussion. That seems like the place to discuss what to do with this.
I would just be concerned a little bit with the momentum. Would we be able to get the same consultants back at some time in the future, likely, for this project? So it's not a question of timing. We wouldn't, they're not flying off to Venezuela or something.
No, they're based in Oakland, so we know how to track them down. In fact, one of them is an Albany resident, so it wouldn't be difficult to employ their services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That meet with everybody's. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay. Other business announcement of events, future agenda items? Seeing none, the next City Council meeting is Monday, December 3rd. And I want to adjourn this evening. As I said earlier, there was a shooting this afternoon in Chicago. I guess a Chicago police officer did die as a result of that. Along with the shooters, several bystanders were shot. I don't know how they are at this point. Originally, I was going to suggest we adjourn in memory of those who lost their lives in the recent fires and those killed in the Thousand Oaks shooting, so we will just remember all of those people. And with that, we are adjourned.